Jazzcast Pros.
In today's episode, you will meet our special guest who was once a successful cabaret performer and after a routine medical exam received the devastating news that she carried the gene mutation that increased her chances by 87% to getting breast cancer and 55% to getting ovarian cancer. All this while caring for her dying mother. She made the bold and brave decision to get a total hysterectomy and double mastectomy. Welcome to Fearless Fridays with Maryann, the podcast to help you get unstuck, heal your inner child, and reshape your future. I am your host, Maryann Rivera-Dannert, and with over 10 years of experience as a coach, author, speaker, and owner of MRD Empowerment Solutions, I use my personal life experience with trauma, healing, and rediscovery as a catalyst for personal growth. My mission is to empower you to discover and unlock your full potential, paving the way to a life marked by freedom and balance. Together, we'll tackle the tough stuff and find the strength within to rise above. And today we have an incredible guest who has not only faced a daunting health challenge, but has also turned her experience into a source of inspiration and resilience. So without further ado, let's bring her on and get started.
I'm Eva Moon, and I am a writer, a musician, performer, creative type person. I live in Washington State. And I guess we're going to talk about the big turn in my life, which happened about 10 years ago.
Yeah. So your journey began with the discovery of a genetic mutation.
Yeah. I carry the BRCA1 genetic mutation, which gave me an 87% chance of breast cancer and a 55% chance of ovarian cancer. And not just that high of a risk of those cancers, but of the deadliest forms of those cancers. My mother was sick with cancer for the same reason, and they tested her because of her cancer and also of her family history of her mother passed away from ovarian cancer, and we have had a lot of other cancer in our family. And she tested positive for the mutation. So my sisters and I all immediately got tested, and I tested positive. I carry the mutation. Both of my sisters tested negative.
Oh, wow.
Which was great. And I was really the best one of the three of us to be positive because I love attention. But at the time, it was a real smack in the face. I was a performer. I was on stage singing a sort of a cabaret type show with my own songs, and I had this persona of being, sexy and fun and funny. And I'd, play the piano and flirt with the audience and wear little cocktail dresses. And all of a sudden I was going to be, the doctors wanted me to have an immediate double mastectomy and total hysterectomy, preventive. I didn't have cancer. But they said that if I didn't have them off, that I would very likely, So like overnight, I'm going, well, where does that leave me? Do I, will I still be a woman?
Right.
What does my husband think? All those things. Will I ever? I immediately, I stopped performing and I stopped writing. I lost my sense of who I was.
Yeah.
And I had to figure that out again. And so within the space of 3 months, it was all over. I had the double mastectomy. I had a total hysterectomy. I was grateful they left me my vagina. And so I was recovering from all that and also trying to help care for my mother who was dying of cancer.
Oh, wow.
I had always expressed myself through music and creativity. So I ended up writing a song just for myself. I didn't really think that I was ever going to go on stage again.
Right.
But I wrote this song that kind of expressed how I felt about losing myself.
Yeah.
And then I wrote another song that was more humorous. It was called Ta-Ta-Ta-Tas, about all the indignities of going to the hospital and having radical surgery and the crazy things. Because if you've ever been in the hospital, it's scary and it's painful and all those things. But there's also funny things that happen.
And the thing about it too is that you were undergoing massive surgery. It wasn't like you were going in for a sprained toe or something like that. So what was the emotional and physical impacts of having such significant surgeries, and how did they change your perspective of life?
Yeah, going into it, I felt like Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz, that I'd been like snatched up by this tornado. Yeah. And I didn't know if I was going to land in Oz on the other side or if I was going to just crash and burn. And I was so worried going into it and so filled with fear. Wasn't filled with doubt. I was sure about my decision that it was what I had to do, but that didn't take away the fear. But after I woke up, I realized that I didn't have any regrets about it. I felt like I had, like my mutant superpower was being able to save my own life and change my future. And, there's so many people who don't have that chance. So I felt really fortunate, but still it was a difficult recovery. My breast surgery, I did a double mastectomy and a reconstruction in the same surgery. They actually used tissue from my butt to make new breasts. I don't have implants. I have, I could, flash you and moon you at the same time. So I got, a smaller butt and new breasts at the same time. But it was almost a 12-hour surgery.
Oh, wow.
I slept through the whole thing. It was hard around my husband.
I hope so.
But it was a tough recovery because I had, surgery on the top and the front, and I had surgery on the low and the back. And, where do you lie down? I have 65 inches of scars. No.
So one of the things that, initially that you had shared was, what was your husband going to think? How was he going to feel? So how did he end up feeling?
Yeah, it was hard for him. And it wasn't hard for him in terms of his response to the changes in my body. He's a good guy, I chose a good guy. But it was hard for him. I don't want to make stereotypes about men, but I think a lot of men in relationships with women, they want to be the knight in shining armor, and they want to, ride out and slay all the dragons. And,
yes.
And he was so helpless. There wasn't anything that he could do to stop the dragons. That was a hard hit for him to feel, because he's always been so strong and capable and all the things that, you want in a partner. And here he was in a situation that he couldn't do anything about.
Right.
He couldn't stop it.
Yeah. So you wrote and performed a one-woman musical comedy about your experience.
I did.
So what inspired you to use humor and creativity as a means of expression?
I've always used humor. I grew up in a family that laughed a lot. My mother was always sharing anything that she thought was funny. And so that was kind of the baseline. I wasn't feeling too humorous, at the beginning. And I wasn't sure that I wanted to do that, to change my persona to be, like mastectomy girl, but I shared the 2 songs that I had written with my mentor, a woman who's been a good friend and a help to me over many years. And she says, "Oh, Eva, you have to do a show." She's a theater person too. And I said, "Oh, no, I'm not going to do a show." But then I sat down and I started writing about my experience, and it just poured out. And like in the space of a week, I had this thing blocked out. I had 9 songs. Wow. And I actually finished an early version of it in time to perform it for my mother in hospice just a few days before she passed away.
Oh, wow.
And, she was beyond being able to speak at that point, but I could see in her eyes, that she understood what I was doing and was, supportive. And I guess that's when I knew that I had to do it. I had to go out and perform this show, because there's so many other people who are going, not just through the genetic mutations and the breast cancer, but everyone has struggles and things that just upend their lives. And if I could use my experience to show them that you can not only survive afterwards, in some ways I'm happier than I was before. I'm certainly more aware that I'm mortal and I'm going to die someday, but it's okay. I'm here now. I'm enjoying life. I jumped out of an airplane.
Oh, wow. What was that like?
It was really fun. I decided I was going to go skydiving, and I had a group of friends who all did it together, and it was Tandem. I had a guy
Instructor person,
attached to me, and I didn't have any fear. It was crazy. We're at like 14,000 feet in an airplane, and the doors open, and I'm sitting in the door, and he says, "Okay, when you're ready, just tap your heels on the bottom of the airplane." And so I tapped my heels, and down we went. And it was the most exhilarating thing. I mean, intellectually, you're falling from 14,000 feet in the air, but there's the sort of animal part of your brain that is afraid of falling from heights.
Yes.
And you're too high up for that part of your brain to recognize that that's the ground. It's too far away. And I think for me anyway, that the sort of instinctual fear didn't kick in. And I felt like I was flying.
Wow. How long did it last? Like how long? I've always wondered that, like from the moment that you jump out to you touch the ground, how long is that?
I had about 60 seconds of free fall, which was the best part. And then you pull the cord and the parachute pops out and you slow down, and then it's sort of like parasailing. You're just floating. And I had handles so that I could like pull the parachute one way or another and swirl. That was the boring part. Just floating down. And we had a smooth landing. The scariest part was signing the releases before we went up.
I can imagine all that language on there.
But no, the free fall was incredible.
You've inspired me just a little bit, not too much. So you have a novel,
Yes.
Pinocchio's Guide to the End of the World, which takes an intriguing approach by continuing Pinocchio's adventures after becoming a human. So how does this narrative tie into your own experiences, and what themes or lessons do you explore in the novel?
Yes, this was sort of the icing on the cake of my recovery. Was writing this novel, and writing is how I process things. And I sort of connected with Pinocchio not too long after my experience, because I experienced such a profound change to my body that I felt a sense almost of imposter syndrome. Like I have these nice breasts that they made for me, but they're not real, and they don't have any feeling. They're numb. And I just felt this real disconnect between my inside and my outside. For quite a while. And I felt, like Pinocchio here, he's this wooden boy, and he's always been made out of wood from the very start of his life. And then the blue fairy comes along, waves her magic wand, and poof, he's got a human body. And everyone always assumes, well, it's happily ever after. He got what he wanted.
Correct.
But I started wondering, how did that work out for him? Did he feel imposter syndrome too? That people on the outside were looking at him and seeing a human body, but on the inside, he probably still felt the same as he did before. That he wasn't really the same as other humans. He wasn't born the same way. He didn't grow up the same way. And I wanted to explore, the expectations that we have for our bodies and what they're going to do for us. And I think sometimes we expect far too much of them. And we expect them to make us happy and to be able to do all the things that we want to do. And so Pinocchio was sort of the one that I turned to explore what it means for your body to change. And in the book, it's an adventure book. I mean, it's set in Europe between the world wars during the rise of fascism, and he has lots of wild adventures. So it's filled with action, but at the same time, there's this story underneath it, his personal search to reconcile who he is on the inside with who he is on the outside, and figure out how does he fit into the world as this person who is kind of neither one nor the other. And so I don't think I'm the only one that feels, that kind of disconnect.
In your own personal journey, with your disconnect, did you ever, go through therapy or anything like that?
I didn't. Actually, I'll tell you what I did. I did kind of in a way, but not with a therapist. Almost from the very beginning, I joined a support group.
Okay.
There's an organ for people with the genetic mutation. There's a group called FORCE, which stands for Facing Our Risk of Cancer Empowered. And they had a forum where people who were going through this could join and post messages. Now there's a lot of Facebook groups for people in my situation, and just sharing experiences with other women who are going through the same thing was so necessary. And that's something I always encourage people, if whatever they're going through, whether it's cancer or something else, support groups are just the most incredible resource, and they're usually free. So that was a huge help to me. I taught there were people who had already gone through the surgeries that I was facing, and they were able to answer so many questions for me and allay my fears of the unknown to a great extent. So, but my therapy mostly is writing. Yeah. In fact, right now I'm working on a new novel, which is also a humorous adventure story, but it's also how I'm dealing with the death of my father. Passed away in December after a long decline with dementia.
Oh, wow.
So,
sorry to hear that.
Thank you. But I'm really glad to be writing this new book that's going to help me unpack my feelings about that.
Yeah. So what has been the most memorable or touching response that you've received from someone who's connected with your story?
I've done the show in a lot of different places, and I was doing the show in Philadelphia, and a woman and her husband came up to me after the show, and she had like tears streaming down her face. And she told me that her mother had died of breast cancer 5 years previously. And in all that 5 years, she had never been able to cry.
Oh, wow.
And when she watched my show, it just broke open for her. She laughed and she cried. And her husband was like weeping too, because he was so moved that she was finally able to let some of the grief that she was holding inside out. So it became, it was so meaningful for me to be a catalyst for her to be able to start healing after all this time.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. What advice would you give to an individual who may be struggling to find strength and a sense of purpose when facing difficult circumstances that deal with, medical issues?
Well, I mean, if you're already in the thick of it, look for the helpers, as Mr. Rogers used to say. Look for people who have been there ahead of you and people on a similar path. The advice that I like to give for people who have not gotten there yet, but you never know when life is going to, bop you on the head, is, imagine that you're walking down a hallway carrying a cup of coffee, and someone is walking the other way and they bump your arm and you spill your coffee. If I asked you why you spilled your coffee, what would you say?
Somebody bumped into me.
That's one reason. But what if you turn it around a little bit, and the reason you spilled coffee was that coffee was in your cup. If it had been tea in your cup, you would have spilled tea.
Right.
And what that means to me is that whatever you fill your cup with as you go through your life, that's what's going to come out when life jostles you. So I've tried to be very mindful since then of what I fill my cup with. I fill my cup with friends and humor, laughter. I meditate. So that I was lucky that I grew up in a family with a lot of laughter in it. So I had a lot of that in my cup, because I certainly wasn't thinking about this before it happened. Life was just easy. But now certainly I am very mindful about what I put in my cup. I try to avoid responding to frustrating situations, small frustrating situations, with anger and loss of control. And I try to, let things slide and do what I can when I can, and let go of the things that I can't do things about. And so those are the kinds of things I'm filling my cup with, because something else is going to happen.
Right.
And I'll be ready for it.
So you are on the Fearless Fridays podcast. How are you living a fearless life, aside from jumping off from planes?
I try to say yes as often as I can, even when I'm a little scared of something. I try to say yes to opportunities. I read this idea. This is from the Huffington Post, and I can't remember the article, but it came across my feed the other day, that someone who was turning 70, or she had just turned 69, and she sent messages out to everyone in her life that she loved, saying that in the year leading up to turning 70, she wanted to have 70 experiences with her friend, with people that she loved. And they could suggest anything. It could be a cup of coffee. It could be a trip to a national park. It could be, bungee jumping, whatever it was going to be. That their job was to propose something that they would do together. And her job was to say yes.
Oh, wow.
So I'm thinking about doing something similar, that reaching out to all the people that I care about in my life and say, let's get together and do something and see where the cards fall. That's how I'm being fearless, is just say yes as many times as I can.
I love that. So as we get ready to wrap up, where can our audience connect with you, learn more about you, and purchase a copy of your book, check out your plays?
My website is evamoon.net. That's EVAMOON, and it's .net. And my book, Pinocchio's Guide to the End of the World, is on Amazon and all the major booksellers. There's also an Audible version if you like audiobooks, and Kindle and everything. And if your readers have a book club that wants to select my book as one of their choices, I am happy to show up either in person if it's close by, or on Zoom if not, and be a visiting author to discuss the book.
I love that. And I'll make sure to capture all of that in the show notes.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for being with us today and sharing your remarkable story and journey with us.
Thank you for having me on, Maryann. I really enjoyed this.
You're welcome. Thank you for tuning into today's episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to leave a 5-star review and share with a friend or two. If you're not already following us on social media, come join the Fearless community at MRD Empowerment Solutions on Facebook or Instagram, or visit our website, MaryannRiveraDannert.com. I'll catch you next week with a new episode, and remember that you are a priority and you matter.